I never expected a simple coffee run to alter the course of my career, and my life. If you've ever witnessed someone being mistreated and wondered whether speaking up was worth the risk, this story might give you your answer. Before I dive in, if you find yourself nodding along or feeling something stir inside you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of people who believe in standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. The evening had settled into that perfect golden hour when I spotted her sitting alone at the corner table of Riverside Café. Diana Chen, the 34-year-old CEO who had transformed a failing tech startup into the industry's rising star in just 3 years. Most people at the office only knew her as the brilliant, somewhat intimidating figure who spoke in quarterly meetings and whose emails arrived at odd hours. I knew her as my boss's boss's boss, practically untouchable in my world as a mid-level marketing strategist. I hadn't planned to approach her. In fact, I was waiting for my to-go order when I overheard the conversation at the table next to hers. "That's her, the one they call the tech princess," a man in an expensive suit said to his colleague, not bothering to lower his voice. "Daddy's money and a pretty face. Give it another year before the board realizes she's out of her depth." His companion chuckled. "She can't be more than 30. Playing CEO until she finds a husband, I bet." I felt my cheeks burn. Diana sat just feet away, pretending to be absorbed in her laptop, but the slight stiffening of her shoulders told me she'd heard every word. The cafe wasn't crowded, their voices carried easily in the quiet space. What happened next wasn't planned. I'd like to say I carefully considered my actions, but the truth is, something in me simply snapped. Maybe it was remembering how my own mother had been passed over for promotion after 20 years at her company, or perhaps it was the casual cruelty in their tone. "Excuse me," I said, stepping toward their table. My heart hammered against my ribs. "I couldn't help overhearing your comments about Ms. Chen." Both men looked up, startled that someone, especially someone they likely deemed insignificant, would interrupt them. "I work at Elysian Tech," I continued, my voice steadier than I felt. "And before you make assumptions about Diana Chen's capabilities or how she got her position, you might want to know that she coded our flagship product's algorithm herself. She holds 4 patents. And she turned down acquisition offers from 3 major competitors because she believes in building something that lasts." The cafe had gone quiet. I could feel eyes on me, including Diana's. "She's also sitting right there," I added, "and deserves the basic respect you'd give any professional, regardless of age or gender." The men's faces cycled through surprise, embarrassment, and finally, a defensive anger. The one who'd spoken first started to say something about just having a private conversation, but his friend tugged at his sleeve, having noticed Diana watching them. I returned to the counter where my order was waiting, hands trembling slightly. I hadn't planned to acknowledge Diana. "What do you say to your CEO after something like that?" But as I turned to leave, she called my name. "Alex," she said. I was shocked she knew who I was. "Would you join me for a moment?" Those 15 minutes changed everything. Diana didn't thank me profusely or get emotional as I might have expected. Instead, she asked me pointed questions about our latest marketing campaign, listening intently to my answers. As our impromptu meeting ended, she said something I'll never forget: "The courage to speak uncomfortable truths is rare. I need more of that in my inner circle." 3 days later, I was promoted to her strategic advisory team. Working closely with Diana over the following months revealed a leader nothing like the polished, perfect image she projected in company-wide meetings. Late one night, as we finalized a presentation for our biggest potential client, she confided in me. "You know, before you stood up for me that day, I'd been considering stepping down," she admitted, rubbing her tired eyes. The whispers, the constant questioning of my decisions, the subtle suggestions that I was too young, too female, too Asian to lead, it wears you down. "Why didn't you?" I asked. "Because you reminded me that perception isn't reality," she said. "And that sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to speak the truth to change the narrative." What Diana didn't know was how close I'd been to leaving Elysian myself. Passed over for promotion twice, I'd started to believe I was invisible. The night I defended her wasn't just about her, it was about every time I'd swallowed my words, every meeting where my ideas were attributed to someone else, every moment I'd made myself smaller to fit expectations. Our working relationship evolved into a genuine friendship built on mutual respect. Diana taught me to navigate corporate politics without compromising my integrity. I helped her connect with the younger employees who found her intimidating. Together, we created a mentorship program that paired senior executives with promising talent from underrepresented backgrounds. 6 months after the Café incident, we faced our biggest challenge. A potential investor, one we desperately needed, made it clear during negotiations that he was uncomfortable with such a young woman at the helm. He suggested, not subtly, that perhaps Diana should consider a more experienced CEO while taking on a different role. The board was split. Some members, seeing only the bottom line, were willing to consider it. Diana called an emergency meeting, and I watched her walk into that boardroom, back straight, eyes clear. "I built this company from the ground up," she told them. "I've earned my place here not because of my age, my gender, or my background, but despite the barriers they've created. If we compromise on who we are to secure this investment, we've already failed." I held my breath as the room fell silent. Then, the oldest board member, a man who had initially opposed Diana's appointment, stood up. "My granddaughter asked me recently why there aren't more women running companies," he said slowly. I didn't have a good answer for her. "But I'd like to tell her about you, Diana. About how you stood your ground today." The board voted unanimously to reject the investor's terms. 2 weeks later, we secured alternate funding on our own terms. That night, Diana and I celebrated with cheap takeout in her office. "You know," she said, raising her paper cup of soda in a toast, "sometimes the most important moments in our lives don't announce themselves. They just happen in coffee shops when we least expect them." I think about that café often. About how easy it would have been to stay silent, to mind my own business, to not risk embarrassment or confrontation. I think about all the parallel universes where I did exactly that, where I'm still in my old position, where Diana perhaps stepped down, where both of us continued to make ourselves smaller to fit into spaces not designed for us. Instead, we're here. Last month, Elysian Tech was named one of the most innovative companies of the year. Diana's leadership style has been profiled in business journals. And me? I'm now Chief Strategy Officer, leading a team that's reshaping how our industry thinks about inclusive product design. The men from the café? I saw one of them at a conference recently. He approached me, somewhat sheepishly, and said he'd followed our company's rise. I was wrong that day, he admitted. About a lot of things. I've learned that courage isn't about grand gestures. It's about those small moments when you choose to speak instead of staying silent, when you decide that some principles matter more than comfort or convenience. Sometimes, that's all it takes to change a trajectory, yours and others. So if you're sitting there wondering whether to speak up the next time you witness an injustice, whether your voice matters in a world that often seems determined not to hear it, it does. One moment of courage can create ripples you never imagined possible. And if this story resonated with you in any way, I'd love to hear about your own experiences in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding your voice and standing your ground in a world that often tells us to do the opposite. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply refuse to be complicit in someone else's diminishment, even when that someone is a stranger in a cafe.